So, recently, Sci-Fi Wire posted an article titled, "Star Wars Writers Predict How the Skywalker Saga Will End." They approached 7 different writers, each of whom had written in some kind of official capacity for Star Wars before, be that novelizations, Marvel comics, expanded universe novels, and they were asked to weigh in on various key aspects of the sequel trilogy's trajectory. What's with Palpatine? Will Kylo Ren be redeemed? What will Rey go on to do? Etc., etc. Some played it pretty safe. One I noticed had a lot of the same thoughts that I did. Some even just hand-waved certain prompts where they were like, I don't really want to speculate about that, which, okay, it's a power move. And then there's beloved sci-fi author Alan Dean Foster. He actually didn't engage with this interview at all. When they tried to reach him for comment, Foster's agent said that instead of an interview, Sci-Fi could just pull excerpts from a treatment that he had already written for episode 9. If you want a sense of his pedigree, Foster has written loads of books, 2 of which are official Star Wars movie novelizations and 2 expanded universe novels. I personally have not read his work before, so I don't know what his baseline is. I'm just getting all of this info from his Wikipedia page, which kind of a little bit sounds like he wrote it himself, just going by its less than impartial tone and the fact that it includes information about his emotional response to various story beats in the Star Wars movies. Citation needed. Anyway, the bits of the treatment that we had in the Sci-Fi article were so tantalizing and terrible, so I had to go over to his very 90s chic website and read the rest of it, which, you know, to do that, you have to scroll back through his blog chronologically. And I thought, what the heck, let's just read this together. So that's what we're doing today. And by today, I mean it's 2 a.m. Let's begin. First, I'm just going to copy and paste all of this into a Word program so I'm not reading lime green text on a black screen for an hour. Blog entry, 1st of May, 2018. We all write our own movies. We all write our own sequels. After seeing The Last Jedi, as an author, I could not escape pondering what I would put on screen for episode 9 were I given the opportunity to do so. Unusually, I took the time to actually compose a treatment, and here it is. Was fun to put together. I love that he admits that this is pretty unusual, because it is. Resurgence, Episode 9, fitting perfectly into the Star Wars naming conventions. View from overhead of towering, snow-capped mountains in the distance, just being touched by a rising sun. Then a vast green valley, continuing to move in closer onto a modest group of figures gathered atop a grassy peak. We see that it is the small band of survivors from TLJ. They are standing in a circle, quiet and thoughtful. Closer in on Rey, as something causes her to turn, shade her eyes, and peer into the distance. Alien music, solemn percussion and brass. Close-ups on the mostly humanoid Almurians, who are accompanied by other aliens and humans, all holding up artificial torches. Move to high shot of a long, impressive procession winding its way outward from a vast, sprawling, modern city. Finn, Rey, Poe, Chewbacca, C-3PO, and R2 say a few words. With that, presumably 10 minutes of screen time have now passed. A simple coffin is brought forward. Through the transparent upper part of the canopy, we see General Organa. A grave appears. Let me unpack a few things. Firstly, a grave appears is a very funny way to convey that there is a grave. Secondly, I don't understand the utter uncreativity of everyone assuming that because Carrie Fisher died in real life, Princess Leia must die in the movies. Like if Daisy Ridley tragically died, you kind of assume they would have to recast her or conspicuously write her out because she's the protagonist. Her physical absence could not easily be written around. But the nature of Leia's involvement as like a mentor, someone who is often orchestrating things from off screen, communicating from a distance, seems to me like she would be relatively easy to write in as alive but off screen, and then just punctuate it with any available footage you still have of her, which I think is just exactly what they're doing. Thirdly, if you are going to kill Leia, I can't think of a worse way to do it than just saying, by the way, she died off screen, especially if this is the first thing that happens in your whole movie. Furthermore, it is ludicrous to me to assume that it makes sense that she would just have a big on-screen, time-taking up funeral. As the music rises, she is buried. Bending, C-3PO whispers to a mournful R2. It looks like Alderaan. Oh God. Back on the Falcon. Now what? Not much of a resistance left to resist. Some are ready to give up. Not Finn. He angrily points out that he didn't flee the First Order to give up. Poe joins in. They can still muster recruits across the galaxy, but they need some time. More importantly, they need a leader. All eyes turn to Rey. Startled, she declines. C-3PO murmurs to R2 that there's something familiar about her, but he can't put a finger on it. She's not fit, she tells them. They need someone with military experience, someone who knows what the First Order might do next. Attention immediately shifts to Finn. He's surprised, but having already forcefully stated his intentions, he finally accepts. He's come a long way. I don't hate this, but I do find it extremely bizarre because to me, the way the former two movies have set it up, it kind of seems like Poe is explicitly being groomed to take over the Resistance. Am I the only one getting that vibe? Like Leia and Holdo had a whole conversation about his potential. That's just the writing on the wall for me. But okay, it can be Finn. It's fine. Maybe Poe just also thought that, but after they've nominated Finn and no one thought to nominate him, he didn't want to look petty, so now he's just never going to be in charge. Okay, they need pilots, support, and most of all, something to fight back with. Weapons, ships, and if possible, allies. R2 and BB-8 beep energetically. The others listen. Beep, 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 I'm just going to imagine that this goes on for 5 uninterrupted minutes. Finn thinks their joint idea is crazy, but Poe thinks better of their idea. Might work if it can be brought to fruition. They now have a strategy of sorts. Next, they need allies. What about their hosts, the Almerians? The Almerian Combine is big, developed, and powerful, but the Almerians are neutral, always have been, even during the fight between the Empire and the Rebellion. Finn and Rey, with C-3PO in tow, will try to persuade them to change their minds. Wow, I can't wait to watch this play out. Our heroes joylessly negotiating with aliens we've never met before. Chewie and Poe take R2 and BB-8 to try and recruit new fighters to the cause. Poe really drew the short straw on this one, didn't he? Good luck recruiting a whole army for the losing side, buddy. Oh, take this big hairy monster that nobody understands and the 2 of our 3 droids that don't speak English. Finn and Rey are hosted in the Almerian capital city. They make the argument that the First Order is relentless and won't stop until it completely controls the known galaxy. The Almerians are neutral and intend to stay that way. Frustration ensues. So Finn eventually asks if the Almerians can remain neutral, but give the Resistance supplies and weapons, and they can't afford to pay for them. They'll pay them back later. I think this is meant to feel like Finn is cleverly exploiting some kind of clever loophole, but like, it's not a loophole. It's just objectively a not neutral thing to do. The Almerians agree for some reason, so okay, being neutral is just our only defining trait and the only value our society seems to hold. Like our whole thing, but no, I guess it's okay. Now they need to try and find allies within the First Order itself. More disgruntled fighters like Finn. But where? The Republic is dead. Its home system destroyed. Hold on a second. Wasn't that Poe's job to find allies? Wasn't that established like 2 paragraphs ago? Like Team A was going to find people to back them financially and where to get weapons and supplies. And then Team B with Poe is going to recruit like soldiers and fighters and stuff. What is Poe's job then if he's not doing that? Did they just want him to go away for a while? Rose makes a suggestion. Where did Rose come from? Team A also got Rose? They really just claimed everybody who speaks English except Poe. It's a daring but dangerous idea, yet could be the best place to look for silent sympathizers. Cut to Coruscant, the planet-wide city. Finn, Rey, and Rose make contact with Resistance elements that have gone to ground. They sympathize and would help, but not with Supreme Leader Snoke in charge. Rey, Finn, Rose are shocked by the refusal. Rey saw Ren kill Snoke, cut him in half. What's going on here? Honestly, I don't understand any of their reactions to this information, because like the First Order is kind of known for being propagandists and liars, and Rey saw Snoke die. So if I was Rey, I would just kind of be like, well, no, Snoke is dead. I mean, they're lying, but I was there. He's dead. It's not like Snoke seemed to be putting in a lot of public appearances. So if anything, I would be like, Kylo Ren is pretending that Snoke is still there. The First Order is covering it up. He's a figurehead, something. Instead, Rey is like gaslit by hearing this news. Like she starts second guessing herself. Like instead of being like, no, that's not true, he's dead, she's just like, what? How can he be alive again from the dead? Even though all this information is coming from people much less directly involved than she is, then something forceful staggers Ray. He's trying to say that she's having a force vision. Cut to Ren, confident but a bit bemused, entering a vast, elegant reception room, the old Imperial quarters. The doors close behind him, and from a small door near the back enters Supreme Leader Snoke. Ren is stunned. Snoke approaches, grinning mirthlessly. Ren says, "Impossible. You're dead." Snoke says, "Killed me? Yes, you did. Want to kill me again?" Is the dialogue always like this? Because if so, honestly, I kind of do want to read his books now. Also, wait a second. Why did Kylo think he was entering this reception room if not to have an audience with Snoke? And how did Snoke know he was going to be here? Did they trick him in here? Did they tell him they'd set up a birthday party for him? How long was Snoke waiting behind his tiny door? And why did they clarify that it was tiny? Ren gapes at him. Snoke slightly lunges toward him. Acting on instinct, Ren draws his lightsaber and strikes Snoke down. He stares down at the undeniable corpse, only looking up at the sound of clapping hands. His eyes widen as Snoke appears from the same door near the back of the chamber. Well done! Sorry. Well done, Snoke says. Do you wish to continue killing me, or would you prefer an explanation? I would honestly love this as a power move if there were only 2 Snokes and the second one came out would you like to kill me again? And then Kylo did, and then Snoke was just dead, and there are no more Snokes. The story just kind of moves on, and then we see Kylo years later, and he's like, I always wondered how there was a second Snoke, and why he let me kill him, but I guess it doesn't matter now. The Clone Wars, when Imperial scientists got very good at producing clones. Yeah, obviously. A small, brilliant segment perfected the technology. Absolute duplication of the original, down to the last neural connection, which allowed for duplication of knowledge, memories, everything. Perfect cloning. Did Ren really think Snoke would allow him to destroy everything he had worked for? First law of military strategy. Always have a reserve in waiting. Wait, so we're meant to believe that in episode 8 when Kylo killed Snoke, Snoke either knew it was going to happen and or wanted it to happen, allowed it? To what end? I love that he's explaining this like he has some kind of strategic upper hand, but his strategic upper hand is just having infinite copies of himself so he can fail and die a lot of times and just keep screwing up into infinity. Also, even if cloning is perfect and the clone is going to behave exactly like you and have all your memories up to the last second, isn't there still some kind of existential dread around the idea that the current version of you will still experience death and cease to exist? And with that in mind, why was he so willing to just drop 2 of them in a power play to demonstrate to Kylo Ren that he has clones? In a world with a confirmed afterlife and ghosts, what are the spiritual implications of this kind of cloning? Does each Snoke possess its own soul capable of becoming its own ghost upon death, so that in the Force afterlife, there are just so many Snokes? Isn't it also weird that he apparently has multiple Snokes already activated and conscious waiting in the wings for when he needs them? How far in advance does he start waking them up? And how are they cool with just waiting in the little closet? Do you think the Snokes had some kind of argument with each other over which one would get to come out and taunt Kylo? Because that would be pretty exciting. Unless you were the first one and you would get chopped in half. How many clones of him are there, Ren wonders. Snoke's grin now turns into an evil grimace. Wouldn't you like to know? He takes a throne-like seat and beckons a wary Ren forward. The resistance is finished, but the girl is still a concern, however slight. A smart ruler leaves no enemies alive, no matter how few. I love the idea of saying a smart man leaves no enemies alive directly to the man who you're keeping on your payroll after he's killed you twice. Ren has a connection with the girl. Is she still alive? And no lies this time. Snoke will know. Don't betray me or I'll know has got to lose some of its punch after the first couple times you've successfully killed a guy. Ren focuses. We see Rey react again, as before. She knows he knows. Snap back to the palace on Coruscant. Snoke knows the truth without Ren having to say anything. Find her. But what Snoke doesn't know, and what Ren holds back from telling him, is that Rey is right here, under the Supreme Leader's nose, on Coruscant. In a visit to the Planetary Security Authority, he describes her to the local authorities, utilizing a mind paint system. As a viewer of this film, I probably would have just accepted that the First Order would be able to produce a photo of Rey from somewhere, considering that, like, she's been on their base multiple times and they have surveillance everywhere. And also considering that they have actively processed her as a prisoner on 2 separate occasions. But no, it's better to have a scene specifically clarifying the minutia of Kylo Ren producing a police sketch of Rey using a mind paint system. After Ren has left, Snoke brings in Hux. Time to bring reluctant systems into the fold. Hux names several that are ripe for takeover. Snoke nods, names 3, one of which is Almuria. Rey, Finn, and Rose, accompanied by C-3PO, are gathering those resistance sympathizers whose hatred of the First Order exceeds their fear of Snoke. It occurs to Finn that they don't need fleets to stop the First Order, they just need to stop Snoke. Plans are laid for an uprising on Coruscant. Wait, so is the rest of the movie really just going to be set on the least exotic looking setting in the entire Star Wars universe, and the one that the least encapsulates the aesthetic of all of the original films? I mean, I personally love Coruscant. It's very the Jetsons, but it's not the most aesthetically Star Wars thing in the universe. Montage showing the passage of time during which the uprising is set into motion. The Almurians produce fighters for the Resistance. Ren and the authorities search for Rey. Star Wars has always been famous for its montages. I'm just going to assume that this is all set to either a very out-of-place pop song or the Scooby-Doo chase scene music. Poe and Chewie arrive and begin to train new pilots. Wait, where did they get those? What have these guys even been doing this whole time? Never mind, it doesn't matter. A fleet appears off Almuria. It's the First Order under Hux, proclaiming that the Almurian Combine is now officially and gloriously welcomed into the Second Empire. The Second Empire is functionally the same as the First Order. It's weird that it's still under Snoke's management and nothing has really changed, including nothing changing in his brain, but he decided to rename it, and I guess it's better because it sounds like the thing from the first Star Wars trilogy, so that's the only reason I can imagine for that. The Almurians protest that they are neutral. Guys, we know. A confident Hux replies that this is all for their own good. Better to be part of the glorious Second Empire than continue as some spineless, unprotected neutrals. The Almurians can comply and all will proceed peacefully, or they will be absorbed through force. This is bad for our heroes because their ships are being built on Almuria, and Poe is now going to have no way to get them out unless they can get the First Order to go away or like clear a path. An anxious Poe informs Rey of what's happening at Almuria and that he won't be able to support her proposed uprising. Oh no, I'm sure she's so sad that Poe can't make it. They owe the Almurians a defense. She eyes Finn. Plans for the uprising are in motion. Too late to stop it now. She tells Finn to go ahead and fight before the Order/Empire finds out about their new ships. Finn wishes her luck, vice versa, and may the Force be with them both. Wait, so is Finn not on Coruscant? Maybe that was just a typo, and like when he said Finn, he meant Poe? Or is Finn leaving Coruscant to go help Poe fight to defend Almuria? But then in that case, he'd have to get in through the First Order blockade, which is like the whole problem. So on Almuria, a grim-faced Poe and Chewbacca prepare to launch their limited force. Then the Almurian leader arrives. Poe is coolly polite toward him until the Almurian tells him that the Combine has decided to fight for its neutrality. There is much brotherly grasping of arms, or maybe tentacles. The Almurians will fight alongside the newly formed resistance squadrons. Look, I'm really not invested in them being neutral. I don't care. It's not compelling. But like, this is not neutral. This thing they're doing of joining forces with one side to fight the other side and also supporting them financially and harboring them against the other ones, none of this is neutral. They kind of just haven't been neutral this entire time, which is not ideal since their one trait is that they're neutral. I don't know, the neutrality is just a very tell and don't show situation. And I realize that in a treatment, you're just being told everything, but we could still have a scene described wherein they act neutral. On Coruscant, Rey and Finn ignite the local rebellion, making progress toward the palace complex. There are enough citizens who hate the Order/Empire to make a real fight of it against the security forces in the city streets, underground, etc. Snoke is informed. He is not worried. Under the stress of combat, Rey lets her guard down for a moment. Ren informs Snoke that she is right here, in Coruscant, and even now heading toward the palace. Snoke, is delighted. Let her come. His last concern will be eliminated, just as the Skywalker line has been terminated, which prompts Ren to ask why Snoke cares so much. If I was Kylo Ren, my second question would probably be, why do you care so much? My first question would probably be, hey, what did you say about eliminating the entire Skywalker line? Is that your goal? 'Cause I'm from that family. I thought you just wanted to kill Luke and the Jedi. You know I'm related to Luke, right? That I'm a Skywalker? Why do I still work for you again? Snoke's expression tightens, and we get a fast-moving flashback to before Episode 1, to before Episode 4, which chronologically is after Episode 1. So you could have just said before Episode 1. A younger, muscular, and even handsome figure that we recognize as Snoke, bullying others, taking what he wants because he can, leaning toward the dark side. He is confronted by another, a hooded figure, who warns him that he is set on an untenable path. Snoke is not afraid. He feels he is more powerful with the Force than anyone. He and the hooded figure fight in a factory where Snoke is knocked into a vat of chemicals. And we finally see the determined yet sympathetic figure of his opponent, a young Obi-Wan Kenobi. Oh my God, that's truly the best thing so far. I mean, not even that it's Obi-Wan. Don't you just hate when your nemesis is trying to turn you to the side of good in a chemical factory? Ain't that just the way? I guess it's all worth it if we get to see buff Snoke. I'm 1,000,000% on board for this flashback. Back in the palace, Snoke turns on Ren, and his fury causes even Ren to draw back. Did he think, Snoke declares as he indicates his ravaged face, that he always looked like this? I mean, I kind of did, because all of the clones that you've made of yourself have turned out looking exactly the way you look now. Was your chemical disfigurement genetic? We're at least 3 clones deep at this point, so yeah, I did kind of assume that if there was some kind of buff movie star original Snoke, we would have seen it by now. Snoke vowed vengeance on Kenobi, any of his relatives, and every one of his pupils. Oh my God, how many degrees of separation before you just stop caring? If you have some kind of amazing, magical, consciousness transplanting, infinite cloning technology at your disposal, why aren't you just living out your days like that, frolicking across this limitless galaxy that you run, enjoying your buff immortality, instead of wasting 90 consecutive years trying to get revenge on a long dead guy who made your first body kind of ugly? Now Kenobi is dead. Anakin/Vader is dead. Leia Organa Skywalker is dead. And finally, Luke Skywalker is dead. Only Ren lives. But as a disciple of Snoke, the best revenge on Kenobi. There are so many caveats to this revenge plan. So he's mad at Kenobi, and he needs revenge on him. But Kenobi is already dead. And also, all of his surviving family, to our knowledge, they are also all dead. So then, Snoke needs revenge on Kenobi's apprentice, who also is dead. So Snoke needs revenge on all of Kenobi's apprentice's descendants, except Kylo. Kylo's cool, even though he tried to kill him twice. Oh, succeeded in killing him twice. That's fine, but Snoke does need revenge on Rey, the student of the descendant of the apprentice of the guy who disfigured Snoke's first body's face. But Snoke did not foresee this girl, who is strangely strong with the Force. She is not a Kenobi, not a Skywalker, but she is the last unpredicted impediment to his rise to complete power and mastery of the Force. Okay, so she just needs to die, and it's unrelated to his backstory. His backstory actually didn't matter. His revenge is done. Forget the backstory. Rey's gotta die because she's his enemy, which we already knew. Man, I'm glad we learned his backstory. Snoke takes no chances. She must die. And she's coming here, right to him. Truly, the ways of the Force are rich with irony. We cannot tell what Ren is thinking. You know what? Forget Ren. I want to know what Alan Dean Foster is thinking. We get a long space battle, but I'm skipping it because it's not very exciting to read. Basically, Poe and the Almerians win out over Hux because they have the idea to utilize drones, giving them the advantage in firepower just because they have a lot of them. There's also a line in there about how the First Order has installed new shields that prevent attacks coming at light speed, which I assume is Alan Dean Foster expressing frustration about the Holdo maneuver thing, which is just kind of ironic considering that he's now introduced a kind of lore-breaking element that the characters can just use drones, which if that had been the case all along, everything would have kind of been pointless. And apparently you can just make so many drones on such short notice. First Order / Empire Security. I'm so glad he renamed it to also be Empire, so now every time he mentions it, he has to type First Order / Empire, when he could have just let it be called the thing it was already called. First Order / Empire Security and crowd control battle the surging crowds. Rey, Finn, Rose, and supporters take down guards and fight their way into the palace complex. They fight their way into the reception room. Ren is there, asks her to surrender. They can't win, Rey argues. Ren steps aside to reveal Snoke! He greets her. She and Finn are shocked, stunned. C-3PO is in oh dear mode. She looks at Ren. C-3PO's a girl? Clone, he tells her. Perfect clone. Indistinguishable from the original. How many, she asks. Ren doesn't know. More than she could defeat, certainly. More than he could. More than they could together. So he's gone fully back to the dark side? He drops his head. Snoke just laughs. This time he won't make the same tactical error he made before. Not that it matters if he does. He looks to his right. 2 more Snokes come through the rear door.
Too many cooks, too many cooks, too many cooks, too many cooks.
So Snoke never really struck me as a team player, and I understand that he'd want to help, himself. But all these Snokes aren't a hive mind. They're not like sharing a consciousness. They're just a bunch of clones with perfectly replicated memory. So if all of these Snokes have the same ambitious and selfish personality and their own lived experiences, then how are so many of them content to be bossed around and used as cannon fodder while one of the other Snokes arbitrarily gets to put himself on the throne? Throne-like seat. Activating her saber, Rey tells Finn and Rose to get out, continue the fight elsewhere. She'll try to hold them off here. No way, they tell her. They fire their weapons. The trio of Snokes ward off the shots. Snoke freezes the trio. Rey drops her saber. Snoke orders Ren to complete the work, to complete himself. Firing up his saber, Ren approaches the paralyzed Rey, who struggles futilely to reach her own weapon. I don't know about you guys, but what I want from episode 8 is for it to return everything to the status quo from the beginning of episode 8, and then just kind of rehash all of the same scenes, proceeding in an almost identical fashion, even beat for beat, and even with visually similar scenes, but then they just end differently to reflect the way that I wanted them to go. We're not moving past the stuff I didn't like, we're just gonna go backwards now. We're just repeating stuff from here on out. Inside, Ren is clearly torn. He doesn't want to kill Rey, but he can't resist Snoke any longer. He apologizes, steps back, raises his saber, and strikes. Finn and Rose scream. At the last possible instant, something knocks Rey aside. Even so, Ren's blow cuts the upper right side of her scalp. She falls to the floor, gasping. Ren stands over her, lightsaber poised to strike. Then Ren, Finn, Rose, and C-3PO, everyone, look to the main portal, their expressions reflecting their utter astonishment. A single figure stands there. Luke Skywalker. He comes forward. Impossible. He's dead. We all saw him die at the end of Ep 8. Or did we? I mean, with the kind of week these guys are having, can they even pretend to be surprised by this? Snoke 1 growls. Okay, but that's not Snoke 1, is it? Isn't it like Snoke 3? Is Snoke 1 just the title of the current standing King Snoke? You cannot be here. I searched for you. Your life force had vanished from perception. That's my subscribers whenever I go longer than 2 weeks between videos. From this plane of existence, yes. Doesn't mean I passed to the other. I knew you'd keep searching for me using the Force, so I had to go away for a while, to that space in between. It's a quiet place. The Force allows it. He smiles. I was tired. I needed a rest anyway. Wow, the perfect battle strategy. Make your enemies think that you're dead by actually being dead, but just halfway, and then when you don't want to be dead anymore, just stop being dead. Ren screams that it's a projection, just like on Crate, and attacks, but this time Luke doesn't duck his strike. In one smooth motion, he activates his saber, his original saber, blocks the blow, and flings Ren aside, but the real battle is between him and Snoke, or rather, Snokes. Yeah, the real battle doesn't involve Kylo or Rey or any of her friends, the new young main characters of the series. The real fight is between this old guy, who was the lead 2 trilogies ago, and 3 clones of a different old guy who we don't know that much about. This is what the fans want to see. Go stand over there, main characters of this trilogy. It's time for Luke to fight Snoke 3 times with his original lightsaber, whatever that means. I think it's supposed to be his green one because that's the one that's not destroyed or physically accounted for, and the fans want to see it. but that was his second lightsaber, so I have no idea what that's about. I really hate that this is probably the exact movie some people wanted to see instead of episode 8. This kind of stupid stuff is what people who don't watch Star Wars think it's gonna be like, and then they make fun of Star Wars. Descending down from his seat, Snoke ignites a saber of his own. So do his 2 doppelgangers. The fight is on. Luke kills one Snoke, fights the remaining pair. Elsewhere, the battle between the uprising and the security and guards rages. Finn and Rose retreat. Outside, among the chaos, they hurriedly discuss what they have seen. Snoke clones have to come from somewhere. They race off. I've totally lost a sense of where C-3PO's gone in all this, but also it's extremely weird that they brought him in the first place, so I guess that's fine. With Luke and the Snoke clones occupied with one another, good band name by the way, Ren reaches down, extending a hand to Rey. Then he notices something and freezes. We see what he sees. Rey, on the floor, breathing hard, the upper right side of her head cut away and cauterized. Amid the exposed bone, a small, free-form transparency fills part of her head, melding sinuously with her brain. Behind the transparency, lights flash and twinkle. Reaching up, Rey touches the exposed area and draws back her hand in shock. The revelation is as unexpected to her as it is to us. How is Rey able to see what's going on with the upper right side of her own scalp? Ren says, "Droid. Part droid. No wonder you mastered the use of the Force so quickly. No wonder you learned so quickly. Hybrid. Monster." All sympathy, all potential affection vanishes from him in an instant. So let's ignore for a second that mechanical prosthetics seem to be a pretty commonplace thing in the Star Wars universe, like kind of on par with just getting fillings in your teeth. My favorite thing about this is that it's presented as an explanation for why Rey is so good at the Force, as if this is a plot thread left hanging, when Force ability has always been a thing that manifests spontaneously in people from all walks of life and then is cultivated through meditation and spirituality. 2 things I would imagine droids are not especially gifted at. He strikes down with his lightsaber. Rolling, Rey dodges the blow, grabs her own weapon, ignites it, and fights back. They battle. I would ask how Rey is not medically in shock from having part of her skull cut away, but I think in Star Wars, shock just doesn't exist. Like, it's kind of accepted that as long as the wound is cauterized, you can just have things cut off and you're fine. Luke kills another Snoke. He forces the last one backward. Snoke taunts him. "Truly, you are a master of the Force, Skywalker, but so am I. And you are one." Looks toward the back door. "I am a multitude." From the rear doorway, more Snokes burst into the room, all armed with lightsabers. I always knew the Star Wars sequel trilogy would end here, on Coruscant, with the main character of another trilogy fighting an army of clones of a guy he has no personal connection to. There are a lot of lightsabers here, so technically this is a really good action sequence. Amid the combat raging outside, Finn and Rose save a high official from being killed by the mob. The Supreme Leader's clones, where do they come from? They persuade the official to show them and head off, but not before they have acquired some grenade-like weapons from dead security personnel. The frightened official shows them the guarded place where Snoke's clones are churned out. While Finn holds off the guards, Rose sets the explosives they have acquired, only for her to be trapped with them inside the complex as alarms blare and emergency doorways slam shut. She and Finn exchange a look. I'm sorry. Wait, how did this blunder occur? You mean to tell me that this cloning facility's one and only automated security response is to just close a bunch of doors and lock the intruder in with all the vulnerable clones and expensive machinery? And didn't Foster unnecessarily describe the explosives as grenade-like? Last I heard, the opposite of what you do with a grenade is like walk with it somewhere and set it down and like place them all over the room methodically and take your time with them. Why didn't they just lob a few through the doorway? Why did they even split up? Like, how is Finn holding off the guards? Above, more and more Snokes pour into the room. Snoke snarls at Luke. "Give up. He can't possibly win." Stepping back, Luke bends, picks up a fallen saber. Maybe he can't, but he feels that the Force is with him. It always has been, even when he was at his lowest moments. Also, these are with him. He activates the second lightsaber and begins to swing both, making 2 circles. Then he starts to cross them in front of him, and then he begins to pivot, faster and faster. A veritable dervish. Surrounded by a ball of multicolored energy, he plows into the multiple Snokes, obliterating them. They can't reach him through the energy sphere he is creating around himself. Are there honestly people who want this? I just want to make it clear that anybody who said the imagery of Leia flying through space was like cheesy or weird weird, is disqualified from defending veritable dervish Luke Skywalker. Nearby, Ren presses Rey. They lock sabers. He taunts her. She came from nowhere. Her parents were nobodies. He will show her. Let her look. She tries to resist, but cannot. In her mind, she sees a rapid montage. Oh good, another famous Star Wars montage. Her parents, junk dealers, with an infant with a deformed skull. So wait, the Rey backstory from episode 8 is still true, but now just in addition to the robot brain thing, they take her to a renegade surgeon on Jakku. There is one possible operation, but it's experimental and highly dangerous. It could kill her. Her parents agree to it. Rey is operated on. The shape of her head is made normal, but with part droid componentry inside to keep her alive. I have to say that when I found out Rey had a robot brain, it never crossed my mind for a moment that it was to cosmetically correct a lumpiness in her head. Natural skin and hair grow swiftly over the surgical opening. Her parents can't handle her. They abandon her as a young girl, paying what they can to Unkar Plutt to look after her. He abandons her as a child, but she turns scavenger and somehow survives. This is another one of those baffling windows into Foster's creative process. Like, if you really wanted to run with the original sold her for drinking money thing and add this new robot brain thing, it seems to me like it would be pretty easy to add this new thing where, like, her parents sold her to a mad doctor for use in medical experimentation. It conveys the same emotional narrative of, like, betrayal and unfairness, and it's actually even more betrayal at this point because it's meaner. Instead, we have these bizarre crossed wires where, like, Rey's parents loved her enough to try to get her this expensive experimental surgery to fix her lumpy head, and it worked. And then unrelated, later at some point, they just became tired of her and sold her for tequila. Rey is shaken by the recovered memories. She relaxes, sways, shuts off her saber. Ren holds off, still conflicted, but finally decides that he has to kill her, to save her from herself, to purify the Force, for his own sake. She falls backward, her eyes closing in resignation and exhaustion, and he moves in. Right into her reactivated lightsaber as her eyes snap open, startled, run through, and as conflicted as ever, Ren dies in front of her, killed in the same way he killed his father. Wow. Beautiful. I kind of expected some kind of closure regarding which side he would eventually choose, but this works too. Here lies Kylo Ren. Never really found out what his deal was. Luke, exhausted, halts. The fireball that has surrounded him vanishes. 3 Snokes remain. The First Leader is triumphant. First Leader? Okay, sure. A Jedi Master may go on, but a lightsaber's power is finite. The trio of Snokes surround him. It's over. I didn't know that a lightsaber's power was finite. Do they just run out of battery? Is that why legacy sabers are highly valued and passed down through multiple generations? I mean, I guess in addition to the kyber crystal, they have power cells that are like batteries so they could just run down or something. My understanding was that those just last a really, really long time, but I'm gonna look it up. If assembled correctly, a power cell could last indefinitely and require no further maintenance from the operator. Okay, so yeah. Below, Finn yells at the imprisoned Rose, but she just smiles at him. A resigned smile as she sets off the explosives. Finn ducks away. The clone manufacturing area is destroyed. Well, if it's any consolation, at least she didn't die in a stupid and preventable way. Above, a startled Snoke reacts. With his attention momentarily distracted, Luke reactivates his twin sabers and throws them. 2 Snokes are speared and killed. The surviving Snoke looks toward the rear doorway, but there are no more Snokes. No more replacement First Leaders. The many have been reduced to 1. But it is enough. Why would he think it's enough? Luke just killed 50 of these when they were fighting him all at the same time. So I don't know why he thinks that this one remaining one is going to have some tactical advantage. Raising his own weapon, he starts forward. Luke waits for the end. Oh, I guess Luke also decided he's done for. I guess because he's disarmed? It's too bad that he threw both his lightsabers across the room and has no ability to put them back into his hands. Luke! Rey throws him her lightsaber. Luke catches it and ends Snoke. Oh, that's good. It seems like he had ample time for a lightsaber to fly through the air into his hand, and then once he had it, it was extremely easy to kill Snoke. So it's a good thing Rey was there to throw it to him. In fact, it's kind of weird that Rey wasn't helping fight the last few Snokes since her only opponent died like several minutes ago. She's just been standing there, armed. And why didn't Snoke consider that he was outnumbered? And why did Luke think he was going to die? I guess they both just kind of forgot she was in the room. Good job, Rey. Totally justifying your role as protagonist of this trilogy. He stumbles over to Rey and she falls against him, sobbing. We see the exposed part of her brain twinkling. There's some stiff competition, but I think that is the best sentence in this treatment. He called me a monster. I am a monster. See? That guy. Over there. Oh, right, he's dead. Okay. Yeah, I guess it doesn't actually matter that much. Luke steps back, eyes her, and holds up his mechanical hand. You're not a monster. You're Rey. Just an enhanced version. Together, they head out of the reception room. I guess to feel better, she just had to be reminded of the really obvious fact that it's very commonplace in this universe. Now she's fine. Above Almeria, Poe and R2 are triumphant. So are the Almerians. But they're still determinedly neutral. Their leader warns Poe. Sure, whatever you say, a grinning Poe replies. R2 informs him that via the secret hyperspace communications channel that he has been told that the First Leader is no more and that Rey and Finn are all right. Beep, 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 beep. Beep, 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 beep. But Rose, Finn and R2 turn sober. I'd really love to see what a sober R2-D2 looks like. They head back down to the surface of Almeria. In the palace on Coruscant, the victorious uprising salutes Luke and Rey as they emerge from the palace into the surrounding area, which is littered with smoking fighting machines, etc. C-3PO, brushing at himself, follows behind. I knew there was something familiar about that girl, he mutters. I am C-3PO. Is that the payoff? That he somehow was able to tell that she had a half-robot brain? Because that's not familiar. It's not like she is part of a droid that he's met. And also, like, what are the implications of that? Are we meant to believe that something in her nature was changed by having a robot brain? Because that's not very uplifting. Luke suddenly staggers, has to sit down up against a tree in the Imperial Park. A concerned Rey bends over him. How can Rey even muster concern at this point when, just in the short time she's known him, he set a precedent for doing this after every single battle? He smiles. It's all right. Everything is all right now. The Force is finally in balance. She tells him he's going to be okay. He tells her he is already okay. There is, however, one small thing she has to do for him. What? Anything. He smiles tiredly. Just a little thing. Take care of the galaxy. He looks toward the setting sun. One sun this time. His smile widens. If there's one thing I love, it's seeing a third movie in a trilogy that's just a beat for beat, slightly stupider reiteration of the same thing that happened in the second movie in the same trilogy. It's definitely more poignant this time, seeing Luke die in the same position, under similar circumstances, again looking at the sun, but this time it's only one, so it's not an echo of his past. It's actually just a reference back to his previous death, which I guess we're meant to feel nostalgic for. It's great that in episode 8, Luke expends a lot of Force energy, and then it's established through dialogue that that can kill you, and then he dies for that reason. And in this movie, he just kind of physically exerts himself and is fine, and then walks around and goes to a park and then sits down and suddenly just dies for seemingly no reason. He stops breathing. No in-between existence this time. He whispers something. Aunt Beru. And dies, eyes open, staring. Aunt Beru. Not Obi-Wan, not Han, not anybody who's touched his life recently, not Darth Vader or Padme, or even Uncle Owen for reasons unknown to us. I'm not going to question why Luke, the human man, is thinking in his dying moments about the woman who raised him, but as a storytelling beat, it is odd. It's just a little curious that across all these stories, she's literally never come up since the moment she was burned to death. And like he seemed to get over it really quickly and be off on his space adventures. She was just kind of a roadblock he had to get past. Furthermore, the audience has no real understanding of Aunt Beru as a character, very little frame of reference for her relationship with Luke, and no emotional attachment to her at all. I guess this is just some kind of callback nod. I assume we're meant to understand that Aunt Beru is welcoming Luke to the afterlife as confirmation that he's actually dead and not just half dead again. And I guess Uncle Owen was busy today or something. But there's just something so charming on a meta level about Luke blurting out the words Aunt Beru as like a reference as his last words, with no precedent for her being mentioned in any of the other movies this trilogy. Holding back her sobs, Rey gently closes his eyes. C-3PO is there to comfort her. I'd like to take this opportunity to gently question Foster's choice to have C-3PO shoulder most of the emotional beats in this story. What does C-3PO comforting somebody even look like? Is he embracing her with his rigid metal arms, whispering to her through his gaping, expressionless mouth. I understand that C-3PO traditionally has moments of sentimentality. They're usually used for contrast, though. Like, he's often the comic relief character, a coward, even selfish. That makes it sweet when he worries about his friends and tries to help them. So given the contrast thing, I feel like that means you get like one per movie, and it can't just be constant. Clearly Foster loves C-3PO. He's had more dialogue than any other character. But in this whole movie, he's just kind of been sentimental C-3PO all the time. It's kind of repetitive and weird. Is the First Order / Empire really finished? C-3PO doesn't know. But he has seen a great deal, and if he has learned anything, it is that nothing is ever, really, completely for certain. Reaching up, he touches her exposed skull portion. No! Has anyone told her lately how really beautiful she is? No! She sniffs, then starts to laugh softly. Then her expression changes as she sees Finn, battered but alive, limping out of the smoking Imperial complex. He comes toward her, and she rises to meet him. C-3PO shakes his head dolefully. Organics. I'll never understand them. Okay, C-3PO closing out the movie. Yeah, why not? Was C-3PO just intended to be the protagonist this whole time? Because, like, Luke showed up really late. It definitely wasn't Rey. We pull back as Finn hurries to embrace Rey, with C-3PO behind them and Luke sitting peacefully, smiling beneath the tree. I love that Foster just forgot Poe existed at some point. The end! And then he leaves us with this note. This story follows upon the events of Episode 8, expanding upon them, correcting certain errors, and filling in plot holes, and without contradicting anything that appeared in the previous film. That which could not be corrected is passed over. So, couple things. One, turning in something as tragically bad as this and then ending with a note about how it's better than the most recent film is a bold move. And two, I love that this note is basically like, I was unhappy with the way things went in Episode 8, and I tried to unwrite some of them in this, because like, dude, we know. You weren't playing your cards close to your chest on this one. Okay, so since it's over, let me just get out my carving knives and really dissect this. They're friendly carving knives. They're like the kind that you carve jack-o'-lanterns with, and then they have like a little orange handle that's made of plastic, and the handle has a smiling pumpkin face on it, so you know that it's friendly. One thing we have to establish about Foster, for fairness' sake, is that he was at a distinct disadvantage from everyone else in the sci-fi article, because this was not originally written for the sci-fi article. Everybody else featured knew they were being asked to make predictions, not just like pie-in-the-sky goals or ideas or how they wanted it to go, like actual predictions, which is not at all what this is. The others all played it about as safely as you would expect them to. They also were writing their opinions in December of 2019, so they had the benefit of all the promotional materials that have come out for the film, all the trailers, all the other speculation happening around them. For example, if Alan Dean Foster had known that Palpatine was coming back, I am very confident that he would have been extremely excited, and also I assume he wouldn't have bothered to bring Snoke back. He would have just rolled with Palpatine. I presume he only went to all that trouble to bring Snoke back because for some reason he decided his story really needed a very powerful, evil old guy, and Snoke was the one that he believed was available to him. Although it is kind of funny to me that, like, he didn't think bringing Luke back was off the table, but for some reason bringing Palpatine back just didn't occur to him. This whole story treatment is so baffling to me. It conveys such a weird inability to roll with any punches. If you're spinning a fantasy scenario with Episode 9 and you can just have whatever you want to have happen, then like your job is to move forward from there. And like anything you didn't like, you can put in new stuff to like overcorrect. You don't have to undo it all. You're really just going to squander your entire runtime backpedaling and retconning things that bugged you in the last movie. I swear 2/3 of this entire treatment are just resetting the chessboard, and then the remaining third is Luke fighting clones. This doesn't feel like an Episode 9, it's just an extremely sloppy and embarrassing rewrite of Episode 8. If anything, if you're really upset with where the story left you and you feel like you have something to prove and you want to do better than the last one that you hated so much, shouldn't that be some kind of interesting creative challenge? If Rey doesn't speak to you as a protagonist and you can't really connect with Rose and you don't understand what Kylo Ren's deal is, like, you're in your fantasy in charge now. You can change all that. Like, this is your opportunity to imbue them all with character traits that you respond to. Instead, you get this bizarre product where Rose is killed unceremoniously, Kylo is killed unceremoniously, and Rey is sidelined just fighting a boss in the corner for the whole ending of the story, while Foster brings back all the characters he liked from the 70s and just puts them back in the starring role. It's so embarrassing. Can you imagine in the original trilogy if we spent all this time with Luke and then he wasn't Darth Vader's son, and then in the final movie, Obi-Wan comes back from the dead and just kills Vader for him, but there are 6 Vaders, and Luke's like standing there like, get him, Obi-Wan! It's even stranger that he's so intent on bringing Snoke back, of all people. If he doesn't like the other new characters, we know even less about Snoke. Why was Snoke so indispensable to the story that we had to waste multiple monologues justifying bringing him back in? And it's bizarre to me that for some reason Foster knew what trajectory he wanted to send Finn on, and Snoke, and even C-3PO, but Rose had to explode, and Rey's primary emotion was weeping over men dying or not liking her. If you remove Rey from this story, nothing changes, not one thing, just no impact at all. Not to be mean, but I've never heard a story concept so devoid of emotion, excitement, or purpose. There's some effort to harken back to iconic imagery from previous films, but it's done so clumsily and betrays a total misunderstanding of what the point of imagery is and why it's ever employed in any film. The narration proudly points out that Kylo Ren is killed in the same way he killed his father, but not really. I mean, he was wounded in the same place, but it was very different circumstances. He wasn't betrayed by someone he loved. He didn't passively let it happen. He didn't die content or disillusioned or really anything but startled. What does it mean that Kylo and Han both died of a stomach wound? Because it kind of appears to mean nothing. Kylo didn't repeat the mistakes of his father. It's not a direct link. It's not really ironic either. Qui-Gon Jinn also died of a stomach stab wound, and we're not meant to treat that as a symbolic connection. I think this is also what Foster was trying to do with Rose's death. It's visually and circumstantially very similar to her sister. They're both sacrificing themselves for the cause and content to do so, and it's an explosion. But what does that mean as a character beat? Because Rose's relationship with her sister wasn't really called into question. She didn't resent her sister's choice or the resistance for that happening. Rose dying in a similar way doesn't present a conclusion to any character growth or conflict. It's just a similar thing happening again. The funniest thing to me is his assertion that he's correcting plot holes. When I look at the sum total of things that he retconned from The Last Jedi, the list is like Luke being dead. I guess him dying was a plot hole in that Foster wasn't happy that that happened. Snoke being dead instead of Snoke being alive 100 times. That was a pretty big plot hole. And of course, Rose being alive instead of Rose being dead in an explosion. I'm so glad he fixed that plot hole. Anyway, I didn't like this. I thought it was very bad, but I did have a fun time reading it. I'm glad that I did. I don't begrudge Alan Dean Foster wanting to write embarrassing speculative fanfic about how he wanted the story to go. I literally just did that in my last video with Frozen 2. And don't worry, I was bullied for that, so all is well. I would love if everyone's sequel trilogy ideas could get made into movies, because some of them would be awful and it would be really funny. But if you unironically want to see a movie like this, that's totally fine, but also I don't think we could ever be friends. Okay, I guess that's it, bye. I liked when Rey was a robot, that was fun. At least in the end, we did have a justification for C-3PO having so many emotional beats. It was to set him up as a love interest, obviously. I'm high-key disappointed that Rey's iconic 3-bun style didn't tie into the robot twist. Like, as soon as it was like being spun, I was already envisioning that the 3-bun style was going to be some kind of weird compensation for her lumpy head.